Hello. So I watched the Tonight programme on ITV this evening, Kids Without Dads. Now, if I was going to make a programme about kids who have absent fathers, I think what I'd do is interview 10 different dads who weren't seeing their children at all, or not very much, and I'd say, what's getting in the way of you seeing your children? And ask them, why aren't you seeing your children? Kind of obvious, really, because if you want to solve a problem, you need to ask questions. And in the situation where dads aren't turning up, the obvious thing to do is ask them, why aren't they turning up? But the Tonight programme did absolutely nothing of the kind. It started with a sort of an appeal from a father to say, every dad ought to connect with his children. Well, I disagree with that. If your ex-partner is crazy, dangerous, or something like that, then you might want to be taking a lot of care about whether you see your children, how you see your children, if it's going to risk exposure to a crazy woman. Then the programme goes on to talk about the damage caused by fathers not being present, so it's kind of a guilt trip. Then it goes on with some sort of children's stories, saying how nice it is for children to have father present, so again a bit of a guilt tripping thing. Then it goes on to say that absence of fathers affects people in all walks of life. Now, I don't think this is very accurate. My understanding is that the upper classes have a much higher rate of marriage and keeping together throughout their children's lives, and that on the whole wealthier people, the upper classes, only tend to divorce after the children have grown up a bit. So they kind of try and keep the family life together, certainly a lot more than middle class, and definitely lots more than the poorer members of society. Then they go on to talk with the single mother. So again, we're not talking to the fathers, we're not asking them really why they don't turn up. So they talk to, I think it's Zyrina, who calls the dad of the family a deadbeat dad and complains about not getting enough money from the dad Matt. But it would be interesting, I'd just like to ask Zyrina why she didn't prepare or save up for having children. If she wanted to have children, why didn't she do some work for a few years and save up so that she would have some money? I don't see why she should see that Matt, the father, should have to provide it if she isn't willing to do some work and provide herself. It's like one standard for the man and another for the mother. And throughout the programme, there's also this catchphrase of man desert. I mean, this is just like a kind of another guilt tripping thing. Men are not turning up. Come on, guys, turn up. We need you to be here. Then I think it's getting some way into about halfway around the programme, or towards the end, it starts to say plenty of dads do stick around. Well, yeah, sure, when the mother isn't crazy, perhaps, of course, guys will stay around if things are amicable after a split up. Yes, then fathers will still involve. But I don't think that's always the case. I think quite often the mothers are using children. I mean, this is certainly my experience. Are denying contact, and they're using children or denying access of the father to the children because they want revenge. They want to manipulate the father in some way, get money out of him, and just inflict emotional damage and so forth. And I think this goes on quite a bit. Then there's this interesting sort of apologising or apologist thing about single mothers. It says these women bring up children in a society that supports them financially and judges them constantly. Now, I really don't know what the experiences of single mums being judged are. I'm not a single mother, but I have a hard time believing that people are actually verbally abusive and judgmental of single mothers. I hang out as a parent in a lot of places where there are plenty of single mums, and I haven't heard any judgments at all. And also, of course, if you're a woman bringing up a child and you're receiving welfare, you're not actually bringing the child up. The state is. I mean, you're doing the childcare, but it's the taxpayer that's funding it. So you're not bringing the child up yourself. And then the programme talks a little bit about benefits in general. So again, we're not talking to fathers about why they aren't turning up. And it tries to sort of mythologise the idea that single mums are all scroungers, or that it's all about scrounging. Now, I think this is a bit of a myth, so I don't think the programme's too far off on this. However, 92% of single parents are mums. Apparently about 60% of single parents are in work, so of course that means 40% aren't. And I suspect about 60%, with those 60% who are in work, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of them are getting some kind of benefits or others. And if it's like childcare vouchers, you can get those, and even people in work can get these sort of childcare vouchers. So in no way is this really addressing this issue with any kind of facts or figures to get an accurate view. I mean, my view is that what the government offers welfare for grows, and what the government taxes shrinks up. And this is why we're seeing, I think, a lot of the growth in single parents and children born out of wedlock and so forth. It is to do with the government giving free homes essentially to single mums, and weekly money to spend to single mothers. But yeah, it's certainly not the whole story, and that topic could be worth more explanation. But again, it's still not talking to men about why they're not turning up as fathers. Then there's some stories about children who hate their absent fathers. This is sort of the darker side of the programme. And again, really, it's just a sort of another shaming tactic. If you don't turn up, your kids will hate you. And then at about the 18th minute of this 24-minute programme, we get a little bit of turning up for dads and saying, yes, many dads do everything to stay in their children's lives, often in difficult circumstances. So here we are with the heroic dads who travel a long way. No mention of all the court battles and things that many fathers have to go through to see their children. And really, again, this is just heroism. Oh look, lots of fathers are being dragged through the dirt and travelling miles, hundreds of miles to see their children. So why aren't you doing it? Then it goes on to another interesting tangent about very few primary school teachers being men. So again, this is another sort of guilt-tripping thing. Come on guys, why aren't you turning up to work with little kiddies, and so on and so forth. And then it sort of ends up with saying that having a male role model is important, but it doesn't have to be the father. It's not essential. So of course a lot of this really is just a completely feminist agenda. You may have spotted this by now, that it's guilt and shame. It's not talking to the men or giving them any platform to talk about their experience. It's very one-sided, and it's ending up by the sort of male disposability point that, well, yes, we don't really need fathers anyway, or at least they're not essential, but they'd just be nice. So there's this sort of just concluding comments that something like convincing them all to join in is one of the challenges we face. And of course it's talking about getting fathers involved and saying it's a big challenge in a programme that just hasn't spoken to fathers and asked them what their challenges are in order to actually understand what this challenge we face is. And again, as I said, it's really a much bigger problem for middle class and definitely for poorer families, much less for the kind of rich media people that make these programmes and tend to stay married and look after their children. The final comment is a sort of plug for the government, and it's helping disadvantaged 2-year-olds. Yeah, well, of course it's very easy to help people with other people's money, and very nice of the programme to put out some the old statist propaganda there. So thanks for listening, and sorry for this just being a sort of a rant, but that's the way of this programme. Bye for now.